Hello to all of my people watching. Welcome to Conversations on the Bridge, where we bring on everyday people who have had extraordinary experiences. Today's guest is a new friend of mine, known for a couple of months. Absolutely lovely, outstanding woman, a real gift to her community and to the world at large. She has had multiple different experiences that I'd love to chat about on this particular conversations series that I'm doing. However, today we're going to be focusing on a near-death experience that she had and then what has come about as a result of that. So let me bring on Jill Cole. Have I got you there, Jill?
Here I am. Hi, Ben.
Hey, Jill, how are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
This is exciting. This is, as you know, my second conversation on the bridge, and so far I'm absolutely loving it. So I guess, what was your life like before this craziness happened? I think it was in 2002 that you had your experience, was it?
Yeah, it was actually. And it's changed exponentially since then, and it changes all the time. So that's what fascinates me so much is you're going along in what you would term a regular life. What are you doing? I mean, single people, they meet other people and get married or live with them and have their jobs and do different things. And at that time, I was a housewife. I had young kids, and I wasn't expecting anything to really change. I was just going along. The kids had sports. We went skiing. We went to the summer house. It was just, they'd have play dates. I'd do the cooking and the cleaning, supportive wife. And then we went skiing one weekend, and it was the very, very start of the ski season. And my husband put me on some demo skis, and he said to me, whatever you do, don't get them scrunched up in the rocks. There's not a hell of a lot of snow, just avoid the rocks. So that was uppermost in mind. And I had just helped somebody down a chute, and I wasn't a particularly advanced skier. I'd say I was medium. I knew how to stop. I could control myself. But that was the very first time that I went so fast. It felt like I was flying. And I thought, wow, now I know why my husband and the boys love skiing so much. It's sort of like that real adrenaline rush. And I had just gone down, and the next minute, my right ski, touched a little pocket of snow, just about the size of a cup. And it just went right up, and the ski didn't come out of the settings and ended up kissing my forehead. And I just heard something go snap, 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 crack.
Oh,
And
wow.
my whole body felt like it had a heart attack. It just went in complete and utter shock instantly. And I just fell over like somebody had sliced the back of all my tendons, like if in the old days where they went hunting and they'd get an antelope or something and they'd slice those things and the whole little animal would collapse.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I basically just collapsed into the side of the hill, and unfortunately it was in the shade. So it was so cold. And then a
It's
lady
also in the snow.
yeah. And she goes, are you okay? I said, no, not really. So she said, okay, I'll go and get help. And somebody else came and they put their skis there like that so that, nobody would smack into me. And they got me in the banana boat, took me to the medical center. This was at Turoa in Oakuni. And the medic that was there had a good look, and he said, look, it's hell of a swollen, but it looks like you've done some serious damage and you need to see a specialist. So long story short, I ended up going for an MRI. And the morning that I went for the MRI, there used to be a guy in New Zealand called Paul Henry. And I think Paul Henry, is that his name? What? The guy used to be a TV chap?
Potentially. Let me just have a look.
I think his name was Paul Henry.
Possibly. So what happened with Paul Henry?
So he ended up having an MRI as well. And the very morning I was going for the MRI, he said, if somebody offers you an MRI at any stage and they offer you music, just say no. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. The very morning I'm going for an MRI. So when she said to me, would you like music? I said, no. So I'm lying in this chamber with this big machine going da, 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 like a jackhammer, and then quiet. And I, in my head, said, I wonder how this machine works. And the next minute I was on a boat with this image in front of me, like a graph, and being shown all the fish in pools underneath. And they said magnetic resonance creating an image. And I went, oh, okay, MRI. And then I was in
Oh, yeah.
England and in Stonehenge. I was being bounced between the stones, big stones, little
So,
stones.
like, as soon as the machine started, you just started going from location to location. Ah, yes. Okay, so then you're in Stonehenge.
Yeah, and my eyes are closed, but I'm traveling. I'm seeing this movie and I'm experiencing everything. I'm right there.
Mhm,
And oh, sorry, I have to back the bus up. What I
mhm.
said was, thank you so much for inventing or creating a human being that was intelligent enough to design this machine. If this
But
was 200 years ago, then what?
was that
Right?
when you were seeing the pools with the fish in it and the
No,
grass?
no, that's when I was just as I closed my eyes to start the process.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
I just automatically gave thanks and said, thank you for designing or creating a human being intelligent enough to make this machine.
Mhm.
I wonder how it works. Then I
Yeah.
got the fish finder. Then I was in Stonehenge. And when they bounced me between little stones, like a short little space, it just went boing, like a frequency. And if it was wider and bigger, they went boing, much bigger. And then they said to me, Stonehenge was a receiving and a transmitting station. And that's how the ancients spoke to the gods. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that. And then suddenly this little man appeared and he looked like Mother Teresa in male form, crinkled brown skin. But he had this almost like big Egyptian um, jewelry thing, like a big, what could you call it? You know, like all those jewels that hang around, like a breastplate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I know the type of thing that you're talking about. Like, quite
yeah.
often see them in movies, but set around those kind of time periods, like the ancient time periods.
And these jewels were more like stones, you know, like opals and turquoise, you know, that kind of thing. And he looked at me and I thought, oh my gosh, this is my guide Aurelius. And I said to him, wow, whichever dimension you're in, is this giving you a headache? You know, that chick, 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 that noise. And he said to me, hush, stop jabbering like an idiot and listen to what I've got to share with you. I want to tell you and show you how the human energy system works. So
Mhm.
there I am having an MRI, and the next minute I see the shape of a human form with fine white, looks like mist coming in through the mouth. And he said, this is your portal of light. And he
Mhm.
said, this is your energy system, your vessel, your body. And yet humans don't even know how it works or how to get the best out of it. And he said, you have, all of you own a hotel with a penthouse and a basement. But most of you spend your time in the basement or the first, second, third floors, not realizing you've got 5, 6, and 7 with your penthouse. So
Mhm.
he said to me, when you have thoughts, they're either light thoughts or heavy thoughts. And he said, you use terminology that you don't ever really think about. He said, have you ever heard the words red with rage or
Mhm.
green with envy? He said, it's very important to study what those words mean, those sayings mean, and where they come from. So he said, I want to give you an example. He said, about energy. And he said, especially color. And a saying like red with rage. So he said many men hold their anger in their chests. And he
Mhm.
said it's anger only because they don't know how to express themselves or communicate well. So they left in a holding pattern. And he said it's red because it's the rage. And he said, when you've got color, he said, then you've got a blockage. It doesn't, energy just doesn't flow through you. So now you holding, you've got a blockage. So he said, that air that comes into your mouth, he said, call it air, call it oxygen, call it spirit, call it life force. He said, for all we care, you can call it strawberry jam. He said, it's a way that it works. And he says, what it does is, he says, you've got 7 floors. And he said, on every floor is a lift door. So he said, it comes into your mouth, and he said, it happens instantly. You don't even have to think about it. And he said, in a nanosecond, as you breathe, each lift door on each floor opens up. And he said, you humans give this names, like these names, meridians, chakras. He said, once again, call them whatever you like. It's an energy system. And he said, as you breathe in, it goes up and down, that oxygen, that life force, that prana, that blessing, whatever, right through the crown, right through the toes. And he said, on each floor, whatever's on that level, that's what the oxygen that will feed, nourish, and go through, whether it's skin or bone or hair. So obviously on this floor, it's very, very different to that floor. Each floor is very different, right? So he said, it comes in, and then he said it hits a portal or a vortex. And he showed me a centrifugal force, like when you watch a doco on a med lab and you see the tubes and they go, so fast while they spin everything. So this is like a helicopter blade going crazy that you don't even know it's there. It's so fast. So the oxygen comes in, goes up instantly, doors open all at the same time. Pew, pew, pew. This energy then feeds that entire area. But he says that's when you have the emotions, the energy in motion. And he said the energy is supposed to recognize the emotion and then let it pass through. Don't hold it. When you hold it, you haven't mastered that situation. That's when you start carrying your baggage, right?
I know about that.
Yeah. So he said, let it go. Let it just go through. So now you've got the red with rage. So now you've got a blockage. So now you're holding. So what's going to happen to that area? You can't feed it what it needs. So you end up with cells that start mutating over time for all the holding, cancer, heart attack, stroke, that kind of stuff. And he said, it's self-imposed because you've been left holding it. And he said, ever since you were a little girl, he said, you were always told to forgive others, but nobody ever told you why. He said, you don't forgive other people for them. You forgive others for you so that you don't hold it, so that you don't cause that long-term damage. And he said, it's like a snake bite, like a poisonous snake bite. The bite of the poisonous snake doesn't kill you. It's the poison that's left in your system. So why would you hold poison in your system? Why would you actually choose that to do that to yourself?
Just a quick question on that. So this is obviously holding negative emotions. I suppose a positive emotion is more as a feeling, whereas a negative thing is sort of emotions and then good feelings.
Well, a positive one's not damaging you, but it's uplifting you. It's creating a higher vibration where the actual, the heartache and the hurt and the rejection, all those, the sadness is a heavy, so it drops down. So your frequency drops down. And as a result, it's so all interconnected because then you start losing out on opportunities, abundance, absolutely everything, because you are not vibrating to your blueprint anymore, your wonderful, magnificent blueprint that you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean, I know that if I'm in a emotional funk or even just thinking of previous emotional things, it's like I notice my blindness to opportunities around me. Like someone if someone offers something and I'm in a funk or whatnot, then my mind doesn't even want to say yes, because I'm instead just focusing on that negative thing that's happened. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's all encompassing. But the
Mhm.
only person that can change it is you.
Yeah, absolutely. So after he explained the how the flow works, is that where the experience finished, or
No. So then he said to me that, what you humans don't understand is that, and he said, now that you've been shown how the system works, now that you've been taught that you forgive others for you, so they don't hold on to it. And he said, are you going to bless those around you, or are you going to poison them with your words? And he said, just remember how it works, how energy works. What did you get me? Did that freeze?
sorry, just lost you. So got to the part where
Okay.
you just remember how energy works, and then that cut.
Whatever you give out is
Mhm,
exactly what you get back. He said they call it the boomerang. He said, and yet
mhm,
some people are so surprised that some things come back to bite them in the ass. But
mhm,
it's the gift that they gave. So what is the gift in life that you want for yourself, for your cells, SELLS, for your health, for your wealth, for everything comes from your portal of light. And that's actually how it works, right? So
mhm.
that is why we always taught to serve and give others, because when we do that, it is service to self, because that's exactly what we're getting back. And it's so simple.
Absolutely. I love the there's an idea, well, more than just an idea, but depending on who you ask, of word magic. And so when you're talking about when you're giving for yourself, and then you say for yourselves, like I love how there's so many different things like that there in the English, well, not just English language, but obviously that's the language I know, where they have double meaning. So yeah. Okay,
They
cool.
always break the words up with me. They said, break all your words up. And when you
Mhm,
do that, it's fascinating. Hey, each one's got its own, like, the intensity or the real meaning of the words then unveil themselves, and you
mhm.
go,
Just like energy and motion. Or
yes,
emotion.
emotion, energy in motion. It doesn't say uh, energy in stagnation.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what happens if energy doesn't move? What happens if a river doesn't move? What
Yeah,
happens?
it gets pretty
It's
stinky from what I've found.
correct. Nothing will grow there. It's just like, ugh, right? Can't nourish or
Mm,
feed or nurture anything. So then after that happened, I was actually quite shocked, because it was like, I just went for an MRI. And this is before my operation.
mhm,
So then the surgeon had a look at the results, and he said, look, this is not great. In actual fact, you've done a hell of a serious injury here to your right knee. And he said, you've severed all the ligaments and all the tendons, damaged the patella, that bone down the side. He said, I don't know, we'll do a big operation. He said, but I can't promise that you're going to walk again. And if you do, that it might not be a fabulous job of walking.
mhm,
So I knew the seriousness of it. And at the time of of the surgery, he was going away on holiday to Australia. So the anaesthetist was going to be looking after me as such. And I'd had a bit of a chest infection, but I'd waited long enough for this appointment, and I just wanted this operation done and dusted, because he said to me I would have to have 4 months in bed. I wasn't even allowed, I could only have crutches, and I wasn't allowed to put any weight on that right foot. You see, it had to hover. So I thought, wow, there's a long recovery ahead of me here. So when the anaesthetist said to me, everything okay? I said, yes. I told a fib. I told, and so had the operation, the surgeon left, and the physiotherapist came to see me after my operation the next day, and she said, I don't like the sound of your chest at all. And she worked on it. She got a lot of gunk, and I was in hospital for 5 days. I actually didn't eat anything for 5 days because I kept on vomiting. I had such low blood pressure and I was weak. And the final day that I had to go, she really cleared my chest out. And she said to the anaesthetist, I don't think she should go home yet. I'm concerned about her chest. And of course, because she had just expelled everything and he had to listen, I said, oh, no, she's okay. She can go. That night, in the middle of the night, it was a Thursday night, Greg went and slept in our bedroom, but I put myself in our guest bedroom because my leg was so fragile and so painful that I couldn't have him tossing and turning because, I'd feel it. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in the middle of the night, sort of 2 or 3 in the morning, I suddenly heard this weird noise, like, almost like a steam train. And I thought, what's that? And it woke me up and it was me. And I realized that I couldn't breathe. And initially I started panicking. It was like, oh my God, if I can't breathe, does this mean that I'm dying? When we've got 2 sons who are 34 and 32 now, but when the eldest one was 5 years old, on the way to school, out of the blue, and we weren't religious, they didn't go to Sunday school or anything, he just turned to me and he said, Mum, do you know what you've got to do just before you die? So I said, what?
Kids with the things they say.
He said,
Yes.
You've got to thank God. I said, for what? He said, for giving you this life. And there I am dying, and this little boy's message. And I thought, I've got to thank God for giving me this life. And as I did that, the whole room lit up with golden light. It was the brightest light, but it was the softest light at the same time. I know that sounds crazy. So bright, but so warm, so encompassing. And 3 huge, huge pairs of hands came out of like the ceiling. It seemed to be like dropping through the actual roof. It was weird. And you know how you see those hands, those Bible hands that are depicted, the hands. They were just like that, and they just opened up. And one was around my torso up here, one was sort of the hips, and the other ones were sort of lower down where my legs are. And they held me and they said, rockabye baby in the treetop. And they sang that, recited is the word I want to say, that those old words to that nursery rhyme. And they said, we're going to show you how to breathe. And they just got me to slow down because I was like hyperventilating. And they said, it is not your time. You have work to do. You're going to be okay. And all the light started fading away. And it was like, what just happened? But suddenly I could breathe. And then I realized I needed to go to the loo. So off on the crutches, back into bed. But then I was thinking, what if this happens again? What if I die alone? And then the door opened and my husband stood there rubbing his eyes, and nothing wakes him up. And he said to me, you called. I said, no, I didn't. He said, yeah, I heard you. I thought, this is very peculiar. And he said, oh, I don't like the look of you at all. And he put me up with pillows and everything. And in the morning, the doctor came, and it was discovered that I had water on the lungs. So basically I was drowning. And if it gets too much, you just have a heart attack and die, and that's it, all over, Red Rover. So I got better. I was looked after. And I just took months and months of healing. And the hardest part of that recovery was accepting help from other people, of actually accepting help. And then after that, everything started going weird.
So everything started going weird. Well, after the near-death experience.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, for example, we were selling a house and coming to live in Wanaka, and our tumble dryer had stopped working. So instead of taking it out of the hole, we kept it in there because the house was on the market, so it would look weird if there was a hole in the laundry. And Greg went skiing that weekend, and his sister came to do some washing, and she put the stuff in the dryer, and suddenly the dryer worked. And once she left and everything, that dryer never worked again. It was like, that was a little bit peculiar. A friend came to see me, and she said to me that she had just been to see her husband's grave. And she said, Jill, I know you've got a special gift. And I'm thinking, this is peculiar. And she said, what did my husband tell me at the grave? And I said, well, I don't know. So she said, you can do this, ask your guide. So I asked, and then I suddenly saw a movie playing. And I said to her, oh, I see you traveling in a train. I can see snowy peaks. And you're going to be giving talks on stages, and you're busy writing a book. Actually, you're going to be writing 2 books, but the first book is only just for you, but there's a second book. And she said, oh, how do you know about the books? And then I said, there's a very strange creature that's just arrived here. And he's got a whole big head like a crocodile, but his torso is like human, like a male with abs. And she said, oh, yeah, that's my guide. And she said, what has he got to say? And I said, I can't understand him. He's going. So she said, ask your guide to interpret. You're just not on that frequency. And the very next minute, I heard him clear as day. And I said, oh, he's saying, be careful who you tell the story to, because many won't believe that there are other beings around like me. They'll just scoff. So that happened. And then we came to Wanaka, and I became a real estate agent. And I had to go out to a certain area where I'd been given a listing about 10 Ks out of Wanaka. And I asked the lady who ran the establishment there if I could put little flyers of a house in her, in the little letterboxes there. And how do I do that? In other words, who do I ask for permission? And she was very, very rude with her response. And I thought, wow, that's weird. And that night, as I was falling asleep, she was standing at the bottom of my bed with her father. And there was a horse, and he was reining in a horse. And I was told he used to rein her in like an animal, and that she bought that business because she wanted to say to him, look at me, please notice me. Please say that you're proud of me. Just please see me. But they said he would never be able to see her, and that people must live to appease themselves, not others. And she was living to appease him. So they taught me that what other people think of you is their business, not yours, and others do not define who you are. You have to know who you are and not leak your power. So they said that if she didn't start living for herself, she would be dead by the end of the year, because she would have died from a heart attack, from an actual broken heart. And they showed me her icing cakes, and they said, no, she's not going to be icing cakes, but they just showed it as an example that she's a very creative being, and yet she's not doing anything creative. She's living for somebody else. She's living for her father's approval, which is not living for her. So they say, who do you live for? What do you live for? Why do you live? You live to expand yourself and be all that you can be, not just some that you can be. Anyway, they then said to me that is why when I had my near-death experience, and they said, you've got work to do, and that's why it's not your time. And then they said, this is your work. And then I went to sleep. Oh, and he was all sort of dressed in British tweeds, the dad. In the morning, I found myself driving back to that place, and my car literally parked itself. And I found myself standing in front of her, and
Mhm.
she said, yes. And I said, I've got a message for you. She said, from who? And I thought, shit, from who? I didn't know, because this sort of stuff hadn't happened. It only happened with that other lady when I saw, that creature and everything. But this was all new to me. And this all happened soon after I'd had the near-death experience. And I said, oh, from my head? I said, sorry, this hasn't happened before. And it's like a movie. I'm watching like a movie playing, like all the scenes. So she said to me, how did you know my father was British? I said, because they dressed him in handicap clothes, like British tweeds. And she said, where did you get this information from? I said, I don't know. I don't know how it works. And she said, well, you're 100% correct. And that's when I started sort of being a little shaky, because I thought, wow, I'm a brand new real estate agent in Wanaka at that time. And I could have just exposed myself as the new utter nutter that had come to right?
takes a fair amount of faith in the process to step out like that.
But it wasn't even that. That's the weirdest thing, Ben. It was like I didn't even have control of it. It was like almost on robotic, like this is what you're doing. And then she said to me a whole lot of things about how unhappy she was and how controlling he was. And I saw her about 2 months later in the supermarket. We didn't even know each other's names. And she looked at me. She said, oh, it's you. So I said, yes, it's me. So she said, I've sold my business. I've bought a house mortgage-free in Auckland, and I'm enrolled in an art class. And she said, I've never felt lighter in my life. And that's when I realized, wow, this is actually a very serious thing. And I said to my guides, what if I get it wrong? And they said, you won't get it wrong, because these are not your words. These are our words. We're just using you as a channel. So that's where the trust came in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess you got given an initial test run at it where you didn't have to think about it, and then afterwards it was like, wait a minute, what if this goes wrong? And that's when they go and said, yeah, you can just trust it.
And then do you know what happened after that? I just got so many like chick all at the same time. A lady, I'd met a lady walking dogs or whatever, and we just got chatting, and she asked me what my interests were, and I said, well, some weird things have been happening, and I think I'd like to look more into that kind of thing. And she said, oh, you need to meet this lady then. And it was a lady in her 70s, lovely Belgian lady. So I made a time to meet her and go over to her house on a Saturday. But I wanted to have a chat. I want to ask her questions, because apparently she was clairvoyant, and I didn't think I was any of those things. I still thought of myself as like a housewife and now a real estate agent, just having had a few weird incidents. And she thought I was going over for a reading. So I said, no, I haven't come for a reading. I've just come to ask you, to have a discussion with you about these weird things. And she said, okay, I tell you what, Jill, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I'm going to ask you to do a reading for me. And I said, well, I don't even know what that means or how to do it. And she said, just sit with a pen and a paper and just, see what comes. And so all the stuff came out, and I told her, and she was like my little mentor, she really helped me develop as such. And then one day she phoned me and she said to me, could you meet me down at the Clutha River, please? I'd like to chat to you about something. So I arrived there and she said, I think I've got lung cancer. And I said, oh, and she said, no, no sympathy. Have I got it or haven't I got it? I said, well, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. So I said, I don't think we're allowed to diagnose or whatever. So she said, look, I'm going to the doctor anyway, but I want your opinion. You've either got this gift or you haven't. So I said, oh, just sit down over there. And I got into my car and there just happened to be a pad and a pen there, which is never a pad and a pen in my car. And I had my one guide that I knew called Aurelius. And I said, Aurelius, has she got lung cancer? And he said, affirmative. So I said, why the lungs? Now, remember how we started this conversation where I told you that they took me into the body and they showed me the emotion where it was trapped. What I forgot to tell you is they told me that every organ in the body carries a different emotion. So look at the body part and what's ailing you, and then look up the metaphysical meaning, and then you'll know what to work on and to heal. So with her, it was the chest, and my guides like started teaching me the different areas, and they said, I said to him, why the chest or why the lungs? And they said, because the lungs are a holding place or a reservoir. And I said, for what? And they said, for all expectations and grief. And she'd had a very unhappy marriage. And her husband had passed away, and the very next minute he arrived. And he said to me, please tell her peace be with you. And then I saw this white dove, and he said intrinsically she was the stronger one in the relationship, but he never physically assaulted her, but he verbally abused her and tried to pull her down so that he could feel better about himself. And so he apologized about that. So when I came out and I told her everything, and she said, oh, we were Catholics, that's what we used to say to each other, peace be with you. She says, but you know what? What he did to me, I've long ago let that go. So I said, so that's great. I said, could you write a paragraph of what he did to you that upset you so much? And her instant reply was, a paragraph? I could write a book.
Just let it go.
And immediately, she wasn't a silly woman. She went, okay. And I said, you have held those emotions and stored them in your chest, your lungs, for all those years. And now they've turned to cancer because they can't hold anymore. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just, as you were talking about, like the emotional energy being held in different organs, there's the Louise Hay book, where she talks about that essentially as well. I haven't actually read the entire book, so I don't know the full ins and outs, but I have looked up for myself when I'm having especially muscular tension, finding out specifically like where that particular muscular tension, because that muscular tension is often attached to an organ as well. And yeah, just based on my own knowing, I can attest to what you are saying around that there. One thing I've also found with meditation and also with like massages or chiropractic work, of which I don't go and get that done myself. I meditate and then my body just does it all for me, which is really cool. It's super useful. But what I've noticed is that when a particularly strong like point of tension gets released, quite often there is an emotion attached to it. And I've had sort of 3 or 4 times where I'll just suddenly get an incredibly vivid memory from when I was a kid, memories that I haven't thought about for the longest time, but these memories just suddenly pop into my vision, and then sort of run through the memory twice. It's like brought me to tears, and then after that, the memory's gone, the emotion attached to it's gone, and the pain's gone all at the same time. So yeah, obviously it's a different way of releasing the
Yeah,
emotional
release.
energy, but the same principle.
Yeah.
So
And that,
after your conversation with the lady who may or may not have had lung cancer, what was the outcome with her?
so it was her time. She
Mhm.
did live for another like year or so, and I think she did it so perfectly because she was so amazing to me. Because then what happened was I was told that I had to do healing on her, and I
Mhm.
laughed and I said, I don't know why they saying that that at all, because I don't know how to heal. And she
Mhm.
said, my daughter's a massage lady. She's got a massage table. Why don't you come? So I said, okay. So it was winter. I went over to her. I had no idea what I was doing. I stood at the base of her feet and I just said to my guide, hey, Aurelius, if you want this to happen, you better do it because, you know. And so I was told, yep, you've got to ask her higher self for permission. And then when you hear the yes, then you know you've got permission to enter that energy field.
Mhm.
And I asked for no side effects for her or me, and also that she just gets the right amount of healing that she needs at the time, because
Mhm.
you're not playing God or whatever, right?
Yeah,
So what if you give her this huge boost of energy and in actual fact she's supposed to pass away within 3 days or whatever, and you don't know, you know, the ego takes over and look at me, how fabulous am I? And that, you know, that is something that I just felt intrinsically not to do, just to ask for the, to me, spirit knows what she needs, and I'm
yeah,
just the conduit. I'm the conduit, right? The water's just coming through the pipe. So
absolutely.
immediately my hand started making the weirdest movements, like this and like that and everything. And then they said, get your left hand and bring it in. And so I'm doing this. And they said, anchor the energy. Because they said, if you are changing the vibrational pattern in that area, so it's almost like if you getting the rocks out of the river so that the river can flow again. You're
Mhm.
getting the blockages out of the energy field so that it can flow again. That's all you're doing by doing that, right? And
Mhm.
they said by harnessing it, you're making it laser beam focus. So if you don't have that hand anchoring it and you're just doing this, it's dispersing far and wide, but they need it concentrated. So like really, you know, short and sharp. And
Mhm.
I did that and she said to me, oh my gosh, Jill, you're a magnetic healer. I said, what's that? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I started getting messages as I went up the body, and I could feel her energy field like cotton wool. And then, as soon as it was smooth, my hand would go to the next area, and I saw them putting down like a white cloth, silvery white cloth over her chest, and then locking it in. And then they gave me the image of the Templars riding off, you know, with their big breastplates and there's big, heavy, clinky armor.
Mhm.
And the next week when I went, my hand went upside down. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is hard work. I said, oh, they're telling me you are giving your body hard work. So she said, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. She said, oh, Jill, just ask. So I said to her, oh, um, you are eating upside down. She says, what do you mean? I said, they're telling me that humans are supposed to eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and dinner like a prince, so that you have a very light tummy when you go to bed because you're not doing anything, and then you're fueling yourself up in the morning for the day. And they said, "You eating upside down." And then the very next minute, I saw inside her body, I saw her intestines, which looked like baked Easter eggs, like in Australia, you get a water and then the water all disappears and they've got a drought and you've got
Yeah, the
cracked mud
cracky, yeah.
eggs. And I said, "Do you have trouble going to the toilet?" She said, "Yes, I have to have a manual evacuation at the doctor's." I said, "You are so dehydrated. They're telling me you have to have a mug of water upon rising and retiring, and it's like a drain cleaner." And she said, "Oh, I have 2 cups of coffee a day." That was her total flu. She was just blocking herself, right? Not looking after herself at all. And eventually she ended up in hospice, and I went to visit her, and I said, "Look, it's pointless buying you chocolates or perfume or, whatever. What can I do for you?" And she says, "Can I have a reading, please?" So I found a little quiet room, and suddenly I saw it was like a cocktail party, and they had a guard of honor for her, and her parents were there, her brother was there, her hubby, everybody was waiting. They were so excited, and they were really saluting the good work that she did while she was on earth. And yeah, so I went and had a discussion with her, and that was the weirdest thing, knowing that when I left that room, I wouldn't see her again. It's like almost you want to run back and go, "Boo, I'm back."
Yeah,
So, but she
absolutely.
taught me a hell of a lot. She was amazing. Yeah.
It's so fascinating that a lady like herself, who was obviously very in tune with the energies that are going on, still had missed so much about the self-care for herself, which is just so common. Watching people give themselves to other people and then not realizing that they also deserve it. Oh, have
But
I got
that's
you
the
there?
biggest. Yep. Yep.
Oh yeah, sorry,
I'm
yeah.
here. Ben, that's the biggest problem I've come across throughout 99.9% of the clients. And it's, I call it value of self-value or self-esteem. And all their lives, they basically being told, "Who do you think you are? Don't excel, don't be vibrant, don't be this, you got to fit in." And no, don't fit in. Be vibrant, be you. There's nobody like you in the whole universe. You weren't supposed to come and be like anybody else. You were supposed to come and be you and give
That's
yourself permission to be you. And it's okay to say no if you know you're tired or whatever. No, I don't
the only
want
way to
to.
not fit in is by not being yourself. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I see every person as their own individual puzzle piece, and they're only fit in the picture if they are who they're meant to be, rather than trying to be something else. And by not having that self-esteem, self-love, self-care, then they aren't being the true fullest version of themselves. And in fact, in doing that, they're actually limiting what is on offer to other people. Yeah, I mean the potential for the individual, if they show themselves that self-love first, means that their cup is full, and then they can, yeah, be that much more of a service. Yeah, not to downplay the service that people give already, but there's just so much more available to both them and the world at large.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. They just need to know that self-service is not selfish.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a question, and I think you've actually, yeah. So since then, had like most of the, like what is your main work? I know that you do the hypnotherapy work, but what is your main work that you do with people?
So since that happened, I just had more and more and more experiences, weird experiences, precognition, having a dream about a car flipping off a bridge. And then I picked a friend up from the airport, and we approached the bridge, and I slowed down because suddenly I remember the dream the night before. And I say, "Wow, I just saw this car flipping over the bridge into the water." and almost stopped as I'm going along. And the next minute there's a car coming, and it's a single bridge lane, and we have got right of way, and there's a car coming doing 100 towards me. And I think, oh my gosh, is this car going to hit us and flip into the water? So it's like those experiences, it's like they're talking to you. It's so magical if you are awake and aware. And then they would make me sick one day, and I'd think, why am I feeling sick? I'm at dis-ease. Something's not resting well with me. And I was taking a friend out to a place for her to meet this guy, and he was going to do some metal work for her. And I said to her, just get out the car and check the car. Let's just walk around. I don't know why I said it. And she said, oh, is there something wrong with the car? I said, I have got no idea. Just a feeling I had. So we walk around the car, have a look. We can't see anything. We look at each other and think, oh, well, Jill's being dippy. And then get in the car, do 100 miles an hour, choof, along. And suddenly a voice in my head says, put your foot on the brake now. So you can't go from 100 to 0. So I just went, ew. And she turns and she said, something wrong with the car? And I'm about to go, no, thinking, how am I going to explain this? And then there's an almighty explosion. And the entire car just went to the side into the gully. And the back wheel had completely burst and gone right down to the axle, right down to that rim. So do you see how? And then I was given an experience of jumping timelines, because I actually asked for it to happen.
So is it like a permanent jump?
Yeah. So what happened was I was crossing the Crown Range from Queenstown to Wanaka. Beautiful summer's evening, and it was quiet. I was the only car on the Crown Range. It was like that twilight hour, and I was just going through the Codrona village, and it was a 70 sign. I was in the 50 zone, and I had only a few meters to go. So I just put my foot on the petrol. So I was ending up doing 70 in the 50 zone, but there was nobody there. I mean, I wasn't hurting anybody and out of nowhere, a cop car appeared, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and I thought, bastard. And in my head, I said to my guards, listen, I wasn't hurting anybody. No damage done. Can't you just tell him to go away? And I kept on looking in my rearview mirror, waiting for the woo, 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 and, pull over. And nothing happened. But suddenly, there were all these cars behind me, and all cars coming towards me. And I thought to myself, that's impossible. There was not one car on the Crown Range. These cars can't be there. Where do they come from? When I got home, I said to my guide, what the hell happened there? And they said, well, you asked to be on a different timeline. So they said if humans are having a bad day and they just need this day to end, they can ask for time to accelerate. But if they need to get tasks done, they can ask for time to slow down. Just ask.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating you said with the timeline story. I've listened to quite a few different near-death experience stories on YouTube, and quite frequently, especially if it's a traumatic accident style thing, it's a very common theme for them to say, like, I was walking across the road and the road was clear, and then suddenly there was a vehicle there that hadn't been there. And I guess it's a similar thing. Instead of switching to the better timeline, that's switching to the timeline that is most important for the next stage in their growth, because obviously these are stories of near-death experiences. So they have this traumatic thing happen, and then obviously your lives, almost without fail, become something incredible as a result. But it's just that common thread at the beginning where they're saying that, it was a clear road, and then all of a sudden, bang, there's a vehicle right there hitting into me. And to be fair, after listening to those kind of videos, there's been times where I've looked left and right before crossing a road, and then I think, I wonder if it's going to be clear the whole way across. So far, so good. But Yeah. So,
So
fascinating thing to think about, but or probably a good thing to not spend too much time, worrying about, because if it's meant to be, then so be it. Um,
exactly, exactly.
yeah.
So,
I want
yes, that was amazing, and then, one day I went for a walk, up on the mountain and looked at the sparkling lake low, below, and once again, I gave gratitude. You know how sometimes your chest gets so full because it's so beautiful that it's almost like you
Mhm,
give a little shudder. It's like your body reacts to the beauty, and it's like, "Wow," gorgeous.
mhm,
And, um, the next minute, there were angels from the left as far as I could see to the right. They were like this, like an amphitheater, like an old coliseum, like all in rows and layers, and their wings were doing this. And as their wings were doing this, vibrating, they all started forming this big tunnel of light. And they said to me, "This is the tunnel of light that people see with near death experiences or when people pass over." And they said they create the tunnel it's like a
nice.
portal, like
Mhm,
something to pass through, and that's why it's just filled with unconditional love.
mhm. Because
And
it's
I
what
didn't ask for that, it just happened. It was like, what the?
mm. I suppose that's the thing, is once your eyes have been opened, well, and assuming you keep them open, then you just get given more and more. Well, it's also assuming that you use the gifts that you've been given. I don't believe that people can just sit there and do nothing with their gifts and experience more and more. I often think of like the monks in India who meditate for 50 years, and they sort of don't really gain much throughout that time period. I mean, they spend 50 years meditating, but they're not providing a service with the
No, no, no,
spiritual growth that
no,
they're having. And I
that's
mean,
wrong.
for
No,
such
just
an
listen.
enlightened country being in
Listen.
desolation.
No, 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 listen to what you've just said.
Hmm.
You've said that they're sitting for 50 years meditating,
Hmm.
yet they haven't done anything. What have they done, Ben?
Well, as to what service they've provided for other people,
Yes, 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 yes. What have they done?
given an example.
Okay, no. So they are light beings,
Hmm.
right? Just like everybody. And the only reason we are light beings is because it's frequency.
Yeah.
Frequency creates a light, right? So
Hmm.
what they are doing is they've chosen a path, their mission, call it whatever you like, to vibrate in stillness. So they are absorbing the chaos
Okay.
and
I
they are
see.
emitting quiet and peace. They are holding such a high vibration. What would it be like on those earth planes if they weren't doing that, if they weren't emitting
Hmm.
that calm? So,
Interesting. That's a completely different perspective on it. I quite like that. Thank you.
but I only have been learning all this recently, and that's why my guides, once again going through the Crown Range, put JOY right across the sky. And I said, big deal, Joy. We all know
Mhm,
that. And they said, no, 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 no. Just own yourself.
mhm.
So we are not on their track. We are not having their life experience. We don't know what they've come to do. We don't even
Hmm.
know what we've come to do. We're still unfolding, right? We're learning all
Yeah,
the time. What you're
absolutely.
doing now and what you might be doing in 10 years' time or even tomorrow can change like this.
Hmm.
But what I have learned is to look at things with new eyes, like the monk. And also, it's made me also realize none of us do it alone. And we don't know what somebody else's mission is. So when somebody tries to denigrate us and what we're doing, you think you go, and this is that beautiful line that I've just recently learned, and it's just perfect. You say to yourself, God or source didn't show them my value because they are not aligned to my destiny. So you're
Yes.
being protected,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I think I saw you posted on post a thing about that on Facebook where, yeah, if someone
Yeah,
doesn't see a value, then accept that as the gift of them not being important. Like they don't trying to keep them on your path when they're not meant to be there is getting rid of the gift of them not seeing your worth.
absolutely. So it's not that you're going to feel rejected and think, oh, nobody loves me and these people haven't invited me to their dinner party. There must be something wrong with me. No, you're getting a gift. They're not your people. They're not supposed to be coming in and discoloring your beautiful color. Your people, your tribe will always come to you at the right time. And
Yeah,
just own
absolutely.
yourself. Give yourself joy every
Mhm.
day, a little something for yourself, so that you're here to experience this life, this earthly incarnation. What are you doing? Are you doing it with eagerness, anticipation, excitement, or are you throwing a pity party?
Absolutely. I mean that's something that I've had to. I mean everyone has had to, but for myself, I had to work on over the years, just time and time again. Where and I'm getting pretty good at it, but obviously still a work in progress. But you're not feeling like I have missed out or lost out when things don't go the way I want. And when I have found myself in that position and then seen the potential positive outcome out of it, like time and time again, I've had all sorts of crazy encounters and different things happen, and I I love sort of like napping backwards every once in a while just to sort of piece together where things went wrong to see the awesomeness that has eventuated from those kinds of things. Um, so yeah, I
I
think
think
that's
everything happens perfectly for us. We don't just realize it. As Michelle says, Jill, everything happens for us, nothing happens to us.
absolutely, yeah. One of my favorite things is that that circumstances don't matter, only your state of being matters. And like that, there's once again the word magic thing is that circumstances do not create matter, only your state of being creates matter. Um,
Yes. And you've
and
got to
so,
explain more, Ben, so that people understand that. So if a circumstance arrives, an event,
mhm,
the event itself is nothing
yeah,
unless
absolutely.
you give it power. So how you react to that event is either going to be a good outcome, a bad outcome, or a neutral one,
Mhm,
right?
absolutely. I've
And then
been
it goes
using that.
in motion.
Mhm. I've been specifically using that idea recently. I heard someone talking about, I think on a YouTube video, um, but they were talking about how they had been sick for a few days and they had made their mindset be, this is my body, like lifting myself up to a new level. And as a part of doing that, my body needs to get rid of the old. And I have been feeling unwell over the last week or so. And if at any point where I start to have those negative thoughts about, oh, why am I feeling unwell? If I flip the transcript in my mind on that there, with that same kind of idea that, oh no, this is my body purging out the unnecessary to take my body to the next level, I feel better immediately. And still a work in progress. And I was even thinking about it just before getting on the stream that my body is still upgrading itself. And obviously also like with the release of tension and whatnot, with what I was saying earlier on about the meditation and having tension releases and emotional releases, there's also the physical releases of stuff that's held on, and also doing different, changing up my diet, which is allowing my body to get rid of stuff. But as a part of that process of getting rid of stuff, it has to pass through, and it can be a little bit of a energetic process where your body feels a little bit out of whack at times. So yeah,
your body
really.
can
So
only
that
perform
perspective
as
on
to how
that,
you look after it, eh?
yeah. And so changing my state of being on that there is what is going to allow the new physical me, and what I guess new me
Yes.
in general. And so that's where the state of being is what matters and creates the new matter.
And that's everything. And that's why they call it Earth Master, because how are you coping with each and every individual situation? Are you mastering it or not? Or is Earth mastering you? So when you become the observer of self, then the reactionary stops. You don't react anymore because you don't have to, because you're observing a situation and you're going, oh, wow, I had that feeling. Oh, why did that evoke that feeling? That's interesting. And then you're observing yourself as a specimen in like standing outside of yourself. And that gives you time to pause and think about why you felt a certain way. And that's when your authentic part comes in, where you're going, okay, usually I would just react like this and then I would feel like this. But in actual fact, why did I react like it? Oh, it's because I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go and plant plants today. And yet my husband wants me to go and plant plants. And then I'm going to feel guilty if I'm not going to go and help him plant plants. But in actual fact, I really, really, really want to sew a new dress, right? And then once again, it's the portal of light, having a communication, valuing yourself and saying, look, you can't sew the dress for me. And I really need it at this amount of time, and you can do that. How about ABC? And that's what it is. But being authentic is recognizing all those emotions and saying, oh, this is me. I'm not a Ben. I'm not
Yeah,
Tom. I'm not Betty. I'm Jill. And that's all right.
absolutely. And that's back to the whole self-worth and self-love thing. Is doing that action for yourself is an act of self-love. But people, I mean, if you don't have that self-worth in the first place, then of course you're going to feel guilty, because you are not providing the service to the person who has worth. So why should you be providing service to someone that does not have worth? Or at least that's the mindset that people have, which is where that guilt comes into play. Yeah.
And no
So
one's more worthy than another.
yeah. Oh no, not at all. It's just that
It's even
mindset that people hold.
yeah, it's even like a brain surgeon and a dustbin boy, or whatever you want to call it, like, man, where would we be without our garbage guys?
Be in a
Seriously,
mess.
they are so important. Where would we be without the guys that actually, with the trucks that deliver food? I mean, man, if you don't have food in the shops, you're going to starve if you don't have you don't have your own veggie gardens or whatever. So how do you say that a surgeon has status above a truck driver? Absolutely ridiculous. That's their path, that's their mission. They've decided to do that. Somebody else has decided to serve in a different way. It's about time that we realized that everybody is equal, but people choose to be twats or not. So I don't care what you do if you are a decent human being, but don't be a twat. Then I'm going to treat you like a twat, right? Because once again, as I said, what you're giving out is exactly what you're going to get back. And yet now you're going, oh, it's because you're racist. It's because you're gender phobic. No, it's none of those things. Live your life. Be your fabulous self. Don't be a twat.
Absolutely. That should be everyone's motto for the day. Don't be a twat, which absolutely. If everybody in the world came to an agreement on that one thing all at the same time, we would enter a new world immediately.
But look, let them be them, you know. I'm happy for them to be them, but don't ram it down my throat, you know, because then
Absolutely. To be
you be
fair, if you don't let them be them, then you're also being a twat. So it's all part of the process.
Exactly.
Mhm. I've got a few questions just around your story, and yeah, if you don't have a particular answer, that's all good. The first one was why were you told no music before going into the MRI? Do you know?
I think because I would have been sidetracked, I would have been listening to that and I would have missed the interaction with my guide, because my guide said that you have to reach a point of stillness
Mhm.
in order to receive communication.
Right.
And he said, when you decide to create within yourself, which is meditation, when you're going to that point of stillness, you enter a different level. So I suppose they were just taking a distraction away for me.
That makes sense. I actually that sort of leads into the second question or observation. Another thing that comes up frequently in near-death experiences is that they hear like a wah, 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 at like at different tones and frequencies. And the MRI machine, which I've never been in one, that has a similar kind of like whooshing tone.
It's
And you also mentioned it when you're switching the scenes.
it's
Um,
like a jackhammer that it's so loud. Hey, it's like and then it's dead, dead, dead quiet as it carries on scanning, and then you hear again and then
it's
dead
almost like
quiet.
the MRI machine helped put you in that position to experience an in-between state.
Yeah.
And then obviously the actual near-death experience happened later. But yeah, I found it really interesting when you said that going between the poles to being in Stonehenge, you could hear a tone or a
Yes.
frequency.
Good.
Um,
They gave me the actual sound traveling from stone to stone.
hmm.
And it
uh,
was different. It was different with the bigger stones. It was a longer travel. So if it was just like that, it was just a wing, right?
sorry,
Oh, it
I thought you
was
meant there
like
was also a frequency
boing. Yeah, it
tone
was a
for
frequency
scenes.
for the actual stones.
Okay, I see. I see. Another one is Aurelius or Aurelius. Is
Yeah,
that the name?
Aurelius, like
So
Marcus Aurelius. Yeah.
Right, yes. So you said that when you were in the MRI machine, so was it the first time you had um, made conscious contact with your guide, Aurelius? Or because it sounds like you already knew his name to be Aurelius at that point.
I did know him but it's the first time I actually saw him and recognized that this is Aurelius, because that lady that said to me, look, I saw my husband and what is the message? And then I saw that like crocodile feature, whatever. I had met her when our son was a baby, and I did a 6-week evening course where there was a naturopath teaching different things, and one of the things was nutrition. And Max wasn't right eating properly, and I thought, well, maybe I need to learn something about nutrition. In actual fact, that was never the case. I didn't need to learn anything about nutrition, but they put that together in my head so that I would go and do this specifically so I could sit next to Glenda and meet Glenda, right? And I didn't know that she was this incredible healer, clairvoyant, medium, everything else. And on the very last night, I had there was a lady there who was an iridologist, and I just saw blue light all around her. And I said to Glenda, wow, look at the blue light around her. And she said, oh, do you see auras? And I said, what the hell's an aura? And she said, Pam, Jill can see auras. And I was so embarrassed. And then we went to the pub after that, and I didn't drink. I had an orange juice. And she said, have you ever meditated? I said, what's that? And so on the Saturday, I went to her and I had my very, very first meditation where I saw all this stuff. And that's when she said to me, you're a natural. You're going to be doing all this stuff and even more than I do, but you've still got young children. And once they've left school, because if you become a weird mother, they'll be ostracized. So you're going to keep everything under sort of wraps until they've gone. And that's exactly what happened. But I was telling you that for a reason. What was that question that you asked that was
I was
leading
just asking about knowing the name of Aurelius.
Yes. So then she said to me, Jill, I'm not going to give you answers anymore. You can do this yourself. And I said, oh, no, I can't. I'm a housewife. And she said, and she taught me how to communicate with my guide. She said, wait for a very quiet time where you know you're not going to get interrupted and the phone's not going to go or anything, in front of your computer or with a pen and paper, and just say, hi, what is it that I need to know at this time? I started with, is anybody there? And I got the giggles because it was deadly quiet. And then I pulled myself together and I said, what is your name? And immediately on the paper came Aurelius. And Aurelius is not like Ben or Mark or Todd or whatever. It's not, where on earth would you get that name from? That was weird. And then once I had that name, that's when I started. Oh my gosh, this dog wants to come in. Sorry, Ben, it's pouring with rain.
That's a good.
Here we go. Come in. And so then I started that conversation with Aurelius, and it just started with a few sentences until I got pages. And that carried on until I met my next guy, Dominus, through very peculiar circumstances. And now I've got both of them, and it's DNA, Dominus and Aurelius.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, I think at the moment we'll call the conversation there. There's so many more things that I want to talk about, but just for the sake of time,
Yes.
I think that we'll call this one, and I'd love to have you back on again. So once again, I would like to thank you, Jill Cole, for jumping on to my stream, Conversations on the Bridge episode 2. If you want to find out more about Jill and Jill's work, there is the link to her website in the description. And if you would like to have any sessions with her, with the work that she does, you can find out information about that on her website as well, all listed down there. If you yourself have your own story of anything out of the ordinary, whether or not it's a story like Jill's or something where you have like astral projected, you've seen something interesting, there's a full list in the description as well, then send me an email to conversationsonthebridge@gmail.com. That's conversationsonthebridge@gmail.com. Just leave a brief description of what your experience was, and then I will be in contact and let you know whether or not you are a good fit for a particular show, and then we will organize a time to go on live and talk about your particular experience. So once again, thank you, Jill. Thank you to my listeners.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for your time.
We'll see you guys soon. Thank you very much. Bye, guys.